I'm Isabel Greaves, and I'll talk about blockchain technology. We will cover Internet of Information, the Internet of Value, the blockchain, potential applications of blockchain, ethical consideration, and then some discussion questions and the references that I used for preparing this. Let's step back and analyze what happens when we share information in the Internet. When I share a document or a photo through the Internet, I'm actually not sending you the original. I'm sending you a copy of that document. The original stays with me and you get a copy. This is true for any kind of file that I send you. But what if I want to send you money through the Internet? I really need to make sure that the money leaves my account and goes into yours. It's really important that I don't keep a copy. In fact, this problem has been the key issue for sending any type of asset through the Internet. All I can send is a copy. This is what has been called the double spend problem by cryptographers for many years. However, today we have solved this problem by relying on powerful intermediaries that make sure the cash leaves my account and goes into yours, and that I don't keep a copy. This is true for any asset that I send through the Internet. It could be money, or it could be votes, intellectual property, like music or files, video, many different digital assets. Intermediary institutions that could be banks or credit card institutions, governments, social media companies, they authenticate our identity and our ownership of the asset. They help us transfer value by clearing and settling operations. They do the record keeping, and they are the means to establish trust. They do that by keeping track of all the transactions with centralized servers. And so far, this system has been working pretty well for most of us. Or has it? What does it take in terms of time and money to send funds to another person? Nowadays, it works pretty well if you lived in a developed country and if you already have a bank account. But what if the person you're transferring money to is in another country? An international wire transfer can cost up to $85, $30 charged by the sending bank, $20 by the receiving bank, and $35 that is charged by the intermediary bank. How long does it take for the transfer to go through? In the era where an email can go around the world in seconds, we find ourselves waiting up to 10 days or more for a transaction to clear. And what about the people that don't have a bank account? If they are able to open one, how long does it take? What if they don't have references? How do banks open accounts for people that don't have an ID or a license or a social security number? What if they have no documents validating their address? For people that form the lowest segment of the social economic chain or that have very little money, it isn't easy to enter the formal banking system. Today, it is estimated that 2 billion people are excluded from the formal banking system, making it even harder for these individuals to access opportunities to improve their life conditions. Another consideration is that institutions today rely on centralized servers that are vulnerable to hacking. Institutions like JP Morgan, the US federal government, LinkedIn, Sony, Home Depot, and others have found out the hard way as they have been victims of hackers. So, what if we could transfer assets the same way we transfer information? Any individual with access to the Internet would have access to the transfer of assets. The speed would be comparable to that of sending an email, and the cost would be negligible. Here enters the blockchain. The blockchain was first described in 1998 by Wei Dai. He suggested the idea of a new form of money that uses cryptography to control its creation and transactions rather than a central authority. This means that trust is not established by an intermediary institution, but by mathematics. However, it wasn't until 2009 that a paper signed by Satoshi Nakamoto was published indicating the first Bitcoin specification and proof of concept. He sent this to a cryptography mailing list, and the code for Bitcoin was quickly adopted, with the first users collaborating online to improve the code and use it to transfer assets amongst themselves. Satoshi left the project in late 2010 without revealing much about himself. In fact, there is much speculation about who he really is. However, since then, the code has continued to be adopted by many individuals, with many developers working on Bitcoin, and in more recent years, the adoption has grown exponentially. So what is a blockchain? Imagine a vast, global, distributed ledger across millions of computers, available to everyone, where any kind of asset, from money to music and everything in between, could be stored, moved, transacted, exchanged, and managed, all without third-party intermediaries. This decentralized, powerful ledger would give rise to the Internet of Value, where we can safely transfer not just money, but any other digital asset, financial assets like bonds, stocks, swaps, notes, assets like votes, loyalty points, assets protected by intellectual property like music, video, and art, and of course, digital currencies like the Bitcoin. The Bitcoin was the first digital cash currency. It relies on cryptography and the blockchain to establish trust and do transactions without a third party or an intermediary institution. Because it relies on cryptography, it's called a cryptocurrency. The blockchain, on the other hand, is the underlying technology for the Bitcoin to operate. It is a global ledger, a network of millions of computers called miners that compete with each other to solve the cryptographic puzzle that validates the transaction. When a puzzle is solved, a transaction is validated, and the miner is rewarded with a small amount in digital currency and earns the right to post the transaction onto a block. The block contains all the transactions conducted in the previous 10 minutes, together with a timestamp and a hash from the previous block. This allows tying the latest block to the previous one, creating a chain of blocks that cannot be changed without redoing the cryptographic puzzle. Every 10 minutes, like a heartbeat of a network, these computers communicate between themselves and add a new block to the chain, updating the network with the transactions that occurred in the last 10 minutes. This way, a chain of blocks is continuously created and shared across the blockchain. If someone wanted to hack a block, they would have to hack that block plus the entire history of previous blocks, not just in one computer, but in millions of computers simultaneously across the globe, and all with the highest level of cryptography. Essentially, that is unhackable, much more secure than any of the systems that we have today. So now we can define the blockchain. It is the underlying technology to the Bitcoin that enables peer-to-peer exchange of digital assets, securing the transactions through globally distributed computations and heavy-duty encryption, and recording the transactions chronologically and publicly. It was first established to exchange Bitcoin, but it has many more applications. The applications in finance are evident as they facilitate the peer-to-peer digital cash transfer. Importantly, Bitcoin is not the only digital currency in use. There are many others. Some of the most widely used are Bitcoin Cash, that is a separate currency to the Bitcoin, Ethereum, NXT Asset Exchange, Dash, Litecoin, Stellar, Ripple, Monero, and many others. Another application is to secure identities, the digital identity. Imagine the possibility of never having to worry about your digital security ever again. The blockchain allows to uniquely authenticate identity in an irrefutable, immutable, and secure manner. Current methods rely on password creation or two-step authentication systems that are exchanged and stored in insecure systems. Blockchain-based authentication systems would be based on irrefutable identity verification using digital signatures based on public key cryptography. In a blockchain identity authentication, the only check needed is whether or not the transaction was signed by the correct private key. This could be applied to digital identities like passports, birth certificates, wedding certificates, IDs, and many more. Smart contracts are legally binding programmable digitized contracts that are entered on the blockchain. Let's say, for example, that two people have agreed to exchange money at a specific time in the future when a set of conditions are met. The conditions, payout, and parties' details would be programmed into a smart contract. And once the conditions are met, then the program would execute and funds would be released and sent to the appropriate party as per the terms of the contract. An area where this could have great impact is in the music industry. Today, songwriters, producers, and musicians are the first to put in any of the work, but are the last to see any profit. A blockchain-empowered smart contract system could provide the means to change this. Let's see what Imogen Heap, a British Grammy-winning recording artist, has done. She's a champion for this application of the blockchain technology. She has already put in place a smart contract for her music. Under a system she calls Mycelium and the blockchain, she is already providing the IP protection to the music she has put there. Her song, Tiny Human, became the first ever to automatically distribute profit to the producers and artists that were involved in its creation. The way it works for the user is that the smart contract activates different levels of payment depending on who wants to access the song. If you just want to enjoy it as a fan, it could be free or could cost some microcents. But if you want the song for a business, let's say you're a film producer and you want to use it in your movie, then the smart contract activates a different level of payment. The beauty is that the peer-to-peer nature of the system would return the benefits directly to the creators of the music. Blockchain can also provide transparency and secure means for elections. Wouldn't it be ideal if we could be 100% certain that our vote is being counted correctly and that there is no way to create fake votes? Already the software to do this has been created. It's called Follow My Vote. It is an end-to-end verifiable online voting software that is open source and is enabled by blockchain and is truly revolutionary. So here we've talked about a few applications, but there are many others, like the sale of tickets for concerts, for sports events, the assignment of secure property rights, having decentralized notary systems or accounting systems. This list goes on and on, but it will depend heavily on how well the blockchain systems are adopted. What is clear is that the blockchain truly holds the potential not only to transform money, but also to impact businesses, governments, and society. I think one of the most relevant ethical considerations is the potential to reduce social inequality. It is estimated that 2 billion people today don't have access to traditional banking. Being able to receive and send digital cash could facilitate their inclusion in economic activities and give them access to opportunities that could help them step out of poverty. However, they still require access to the internet. As businesses and economies in the developed world leverage digital tools more and more, the countries or the areas that do not have reliable internet service will fall back even more, creating an even larger gap in social inequality. Some questions to guide our discussion. Do you see blockchain technology as a possible enabler for your current business or line of work? How do you feel about the peer-to-peer nature of this technology? Do you see it as a threat or as an opportunity? Here are the references that I used. I highly recommend the TED Talk from Don Tapscott. Thank you for listening.